Video games have been around for quite a few years now, and a lot has changed in that time. It started off as nothing more than two white lines knocking a ball back and forth in the breakout hit Pong, all the way to navigating a lifelike virtual replica of Los Angeles in the crazy world of Grand Theft Auto 5. It's become a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's had its highs and lows, sure, but there is a big problem with the industry that seems to get swept under the rug a little bit too often, and I think it's time we as a society talked about it. Sexism and racism have plagued video games for years, and it seems like we're just accepting that by writing it off as it's just a game or it isn't real. Have you ever seen one of those classic action blockbusters where the good guy is finally going to get his revenge on the bad guy, and then the villain, with his last words before he's either killed or hauled off to jail, mutters the line,
"Please understand, it was all business. It wasn't personal."
Well, that's kind of how we as consumers have come to accept video games over the years. We're the good guy, except instead of serving up revenge, we're saying, yeah, you're right, I guess that's just the way it is. We've accepted the way women and others that don't fall within the dominant ideology are portrayed, not only in the games themselves, but even the way they're advertised. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't to say I don't love my fair share of fighting in the trenches in Call of Duty or driving down Sunset Boulevard in a tank in Grand Theft Auto. But before we can tackle the widely debated issue of whether or not there is a correlation between violent video games and aggressive behavior in players, we need to look at an issue that begins before one even picks up a controller. The problem is how these games are being marketed. Lack of representation and misrepresentation of the underrepresented? Stay with me on that one. I'm talking about stereotypes used in video game marketing. I'm sure you know the ones I'm talking about before I even tell you. In an extensive study done by Elizabeth Bem Morowitz, she observed the classic game marketing stereotypes that continue to plague the industry and the implications of these stereotypes, specifically the white male hero, submissive sexualized female, Asian ninja, and deviant blackmail, to name just a few. She conducted several research questions, one of which stood out dramatically. Out of the 383 advertised games examined, excluding characters whose race could not be identified, whites comprised of an astounding 82% of all characters. Blacks, 8%, Asians, 7%, Native Americans, 2%, and Latinos, just 1%. Approximately 80% were male and 20% female. Now, knowing that, isn't it sad to find out that of the percentages listed, whites are proportionately the least likely to be portrayed as violent? So you have a wildly underrepresented portion of the population, and the portion that is represented is in a negative light. And yet we continue to wonder why we have children who grow up playing these video games have major issues with their self-image. Now, there were a lot of findings in this study that are of extreme importance, but I kept coming back to one in particular. It was the topic of major social implications from these advertisements. In a direct quote from the study, she writes, "The stereotype primes found in US-based video game advertisements may influence social perceptions and act as a sanction of prejudicial treatment of non-dominant social groups in the USA." The keywords that should really stand out to you there are sanction of prejudicial treatment. A sanction is an authoritative permission or approval. In other words, an authoritative approval of discrimination against people who aren't part of the dominant ideology, which we've all come to understand the concept of thanks to culture, race, and media. I could go on for hours about the different ways we are putting negative connotations on gender and the lack of and misrepresentation of certain ethnic groups in video game advertising, but I think my point is clear. There isn't some special company looking out for consumers when it comes to the way ads can make you feel. It's up to you, the consumer, to speak out against it and make your voice heard. It really is an epidemic in the industry, and we have the power to fight it. With the knowledge gained from research studies like this one, we have statistical proof there is a problem. Now we just need to be our own solution.